Oh, hello there. Yes, Easter Sunday. A young man's thoughts go to the fact that it's not raining today, which is something, and also a young man's thoughts, but obviously not mine, go to it's the new Culture Forum's latest video on the West, wherever that is, and today they're talking about the rule of law. Before we get to the painful video, I must just show you the painful intro that they subjected me to. Who chooses this stuff? That's the question. I mean, who? Yes, see what I mean? Very nasty. Anyway, here's the intro. Let's tell you what we can expect. Let's see what's in store.
We've got to be unembarrassed, Mark, and that's one of the reasons I'm using my immigrant privilege to make this point. We've got to be unembarrassed about saying what we believe in, what are British values, what are Western values, and I'm afraid we've lived through a period of time when it's become unacceptable.
Every contingency is catered to by being in the West. The fact that there's a rule of law, that the police aren't supposed, I mean, sometimes they do, but the police aren't supposed to kind of screw you over. Like, as a woman, you can expect to be safe. You have rights.
Even most of the wokesters who are sort of constantly engaging in this indulgent assault on the West, I think they might get a nasty surprise when they discover what a world not fundamentally governed by Western principles is like.
Yes, there you have it. The West, wherever that is, and the rule of law. We'll come back to Zoe, just make some comments about her view of the police, which is quite benign. Indeed, the entire show's view of the law is quite benign, but that's another one. Just that final one about sort of that subtle dig at people that want to protest things. Oddly, this entire show is about people protesting and how vitally important it is. Most of the New Culture Forum's video this week is a kind of irony-free zone. Anyway, let's move on slightly.
Division and competition also meant endless war. But desperate and bloody as those conflicts were, the arms race helped to develop the military superiority that supported the West's rise to global dominance and kept it safe from losing out to rivals with less interest in innovation and individual expression.
Yes, there you are, neatly brushing over hundreds of years of bloody European warfare, because once we got all those weapons sorted out, we were able to go out there in the world and not oppress people in the slightest. Yeah, okay then. This basic problem with number 3 here in this issue about the law is, amongst the basic problems, is it has this kind of inevitability about history to it. So, for example, they will very much go on about Magna Carta and how vitally important that was to individual liberty, because sure enough, at Runnymede 1215, as we all know, King John reluctantly signed some of his powers away to the barons, and sure enough, as sure as night follows day, 800 years later, people got the vote. And the New Culture Forum and the various contributors really don't like Marxist ideas, but I think if you try to run that view of history past anyone with even a passing knowledge of Marxism, they would fall off their stool laughing. I've already done that twice this morning, so you don't have to. There are, I mean, this basic issue is central to this narrative. I'm reminded of James Burke's Connections from the 1970s, where he would somehow link a screw pump in Mesopotamia with the shuttle or something. It doesn't really make any sense to view history as that kind of line, a linear event. We've all seen Back to the Future. We know that that's not like that. We do along the way get lectured by various talking heads, like Mr. Kimball, for example, who It says about how important the rule of law is. Nobody in this country will know who he is, but he's quite famous in the States because he insisted that Joe Biden stole the election. The rule of law? Okay, then. There's this sort of idea about individual freedom at the central part of this, that there's this kind of rising tide in the West from the barbarians, apparently. I'm not quite sure still how that works. But anyway, there's this rising tide which will somehow float all boats, which stems from the Magna Carta. And we're all allowed to be critical, apart from the nasty lefties that aren't, obviously. They will have to be put down. Just to briefly go back to Zoe and her benign view of the police, I'm not convinced that the average woman in the UK anymore particularly wants to go up to a policeman and ask for their assistance. Not over the last few years, in terms of what we've been seeing. I mean, this archetypal kind of David Starkey view of the world, whereby somehow something the king did in 1303 is vitally important to our individual freedoms today, and you'd be a communist to question it. Well, no. It's all about a nice, very, very nice, very, very cosy view about who the law historically in the West has benefited. I'm sorry, but I reject the notion that the Magna Carta somehow set us on a path to individual liberty. It wasn't individual liberty. It was about the middle classes, and, the show will occasionally dip its toe in that kind of view of the world. But it's all about middle class and property rights, and that's their important thing about the rule of law. Because if you look across the New Culture Forum's website, you will find loads of stuff that isn't really particularly interested in individual liberty. I mean, just unfortunately this week they released a video about grooming gangs. They meant particular coloured grooming gangs, obviously, particular colours of individual that were in grooming gangs. It wasn't a great week to release it, but you just have to look at the comments underneath it to see what the demographic is that realistically the New Cultural Forum is aiming at. And they aren't people particularly interested in the notion of the rule of law. Whenever I hear people like this talking about the rule of law, I'm kind of remember that famous film Judgment of Nuremberg. Great film. Spencer Tracy, do watch it, it's great. Which is all about the way, effectively, that the Nazis completely captured their legal system. And for all the individual rights and liberties, what were struck down in stone at Magna Carta, they simply became a tool of the state, and a particularly nasty state at that. And increasingly, when I look at people giving their contributions to the New Cultural Forum, I can't tell them apart from those people at all. I see their arguments as being the same, especially when they're talking about defending Western culture, wherever that is, whatever that is. Anyway, links down below. Do watch it for yourself. I don't know. I just find these things just really shallow. I think anyone who's got a modicum of education, at least at a kind of degree level, indeed before that probably, would be able to just think to themselves, yeah, but it's just not that simple, is it? Anyway, I'm going to enjoy my personal freedoms by posting this today. Have a good rest of the day. I might try and cut the grass today. Don't think I want to, though.